We're about to begin the service. It's Janet Keiser. Just as a gentle reminder, folks, for those of you here in the chapel, there are many people also watching online. If you have a cell phone with you this afternoon, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. Officiating this afternoon is Rabbi Jeffrey Weil and Cantor Daniel Gale, both from Ezra Habanim, the Niles Township congregation in Skokie.
In the Bible, when something calamitous or terribly sad would happen to our biblical forebears, they would tear. They do an act of kriya, tearing. Doing so demonstrated their pain and really exposed their vulnerable hearts by tearing their garments. We do the same today. The blessing for kriya, which the mourners, those who are wearing the kriya ribbons, will do in a moment, acknowledges God as the Dayan HaEmet, the judge of truth, or the true judge. Sometimes, at times like this, it's difficult for us to understand God's ways and to understand God in that way. But our tradition nudges us in the direction, particularly at these times, to acknowledge the judge of truth, the Dayan HaEmet. So for those who are wearing the ribbons, the mourners, let's rise and come close. Verses from the psalmist, the Psalms. Adonai, ma adam v'teda ehu, ben enosh v'techashvehu. Adam lehevel dama, yamav ketzel over, baboker tzitz v'chalaf, la'erev yimaleo v'yavesh. Eternal God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you would be mindful of us? We're all of us just a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass which in the morning it shoots up and is renewed, and in the evening of all of our lives it fades and withers. But God, you cause all of us to return unto dust, saying, Shuvu v'nei Adam, return, O mortal ones. Would that we were wise, and would that we understood whither we go from here. For when we die, we carry nothing with us, not our glory, not our wealth. But God, you say, Shmor tam ur eyashar, mark the wholehearted, behold the upright. Those are the ones who shall find peace, who shall find shalom in the end. Friends, today we gather very sadly to remember one who is Tam v'Yashar. She was wholehearted, and she was upright, and she was wise, and she was full of gratitude, and she was full of love. Janet Keiser. You'll find in our handouts the 23rd Psalm. I'll read the 23rd Psalm first in Hebrew, and then we'll read it together in English. Adonai, ro'i lo echsar, bino desher yibitzeni, al mei menuchot yinahaleni nafshi yishovev, yancheni v'ma'aglei tzedek l'ma'an shemo, gam ki elech b'getz al-mavet lo irara ki yata imadi, shivtechad mishantecha, hema yinachamuni, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorai, tishanta v'shemen roshi, kosi ravaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirtafuni kol yemei chaya. V'shavti beveit Adonai la'orach yamim. We read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Janet Keiser had faith. She had tremendous, sincere faith. And one of the expressions that she found meaningful of faith was the Avinu Malkeinu. It means our Father, our Parent, our King, our Sovereign. Even when she couldn't hear, she received comfort just by seeing it on a screen, seeing a cantor chant it, not even being able to hear the words. So on this occasion, it's my honor to call forth my colleague, Cantor Daniel Gale, to sing Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu. The first words are Shema Kolenu. Hear our voice as we join together in memory of our dear Janet. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu, V'ya'ol aleinu, V'tapeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, kol dever v'cherev, kol dever v'cherev, v'rahav me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, kol tsar u'mastin me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, kotvenu b'sefer chaim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu.
L'kol zman ve'et l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, et la'leret ve'et lamut, et latat ve'et la'kor natua, et lifrot ve'et livnot, et livkot ve'et lischok, et tzvod ve'et rakod. From Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, for everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time when we must refrain from our embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep, a time to discard, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time for silence, and a time to speak. And so we speak words in memory of, tribute of, in love for Janet Keiser. This week's Torah portion is Hukat. Israelites are in the desert, and we're near the end of our time in the desert now, in the Midbar, and Miriam dies. Miriam passes away. This is Moses' older sister in this Torah portion that we read this week. Miriam, who protected the very life of her brother, Moses, when he was drawn from the waters. Miriam, who convinced, according to Midrash, the Israelites to bring a new generation of children into the world, dangerous though that world was for them. Miriam, who danced and who faithfully led the women in song, believing in and grateful for God's miracles. Miriam, by whose merit the Israelites had water during their years of wandering through the Be'er Miriam, the well of Miriam. Janet Keiser, like Miriam, was also protective of her own people. She was dedicated to the Jewish people. She was faithful as well. She provided as well. And she too danced. And so, as the ancient Israelites mourned Miriam bat Avraham v'Yocheved in Torah, so do we today mourn Yosifa bat Eliezer v'Leah, Janet Keiser. And as we remember her, we all understand and we know one thing for sure. We're all better people for having had Janet in our lives. Janet was the middle child of Leah, my dear friend, and Lester Lazier, sister to Brenda and to Stephen, his memory for blessing. Their home in Sioux City, a brick house on the corner, was a meeting place for friends. And friends were always a huge part of Janet's life. She was like a mediator among her friends. She just wanted shalom, peace among everybody. And it was a blessing that her dear friends from childhood were able to connect with Janet in her final days. Those years of her childhood back in Sioux City, it was like a time of innocence, a time of chasing lightning bugs, of spending time with family at the family harness shop, summer trips to Chicago when Janet and Brenda would sit in the way back of the station wagon and they would sing to fellow travelers also on the road. Synagogue, of course, and not surprisingly, was central to family life. The kids would take the Hebrew school bus during the week, and they attended junior congregation. Leah was a hands-on, loving parent. Lester was also an extremely warm and loving father. There was never any doubt for Brenda, Janet, and Stephen that their father and, of course, their mother loved them. Janet was a very good student. She was really good at very many things. She was so good as a baton twirler that she was asked to give lessons to neighborhood kids. She was also a very talented violinist. She was first chair, and she even considered majoring in music. But when she enrolled at University of Oklahoma, she took a different path. She focused on special education. When she graduated, Janet was not sure where to go, where to settle. Her mother, Leah, told her to go to Chicago. There's family here, and so forth. And so here, Janet came. Janet learned much more than that and gained much more than that from her mother. She told me so. Janet told me so. I had some conversations with Janet over the last couple of years. and she wanted me to pay close attention to these conversations. She was anticipating this day. In one conversation, she told me that it was her mother, Leah, who taught her by example and by guidance to cultivate a heart of gratitude. And even as Janet was struggling with her illness, she made it clear to me, and I think to many here, that she was grateful for her life. She said that she'd been grateful to God, she said, since I'm a kid, for all the blessings that she has enjoyed for herself and her family. And so as a young woman in Chicago, living for a while in her grandfather's third-floor Skokie apartment, she would occasionally attend Jewish singles dances. She loved to dance. She was a great dancer. And at one dance, she meets a man, Bernie Keiser. They were both decked out with the heels and the lifts and the whole disco get-up, and they danced. And Janet was happy that this young man was a good dancer. Not only a good dance partner, but they would marry and become life partners. They lived first at 2800 Lakeshore Drive and then at 3200. Janet, at the time, she was doing challenging work with CPS, Chicago Public Schools, as a teacher for children with significant challenges. This deeply difficult work reflected her deep heart, for sure. She was teaching, working, had an income, and that steady income enabled her to support the founding of Bernie's business, Architects, where Janet would work during the summers. And she worked until the birth of Ian, her son, first son, and a few years later, Ross. Motherhood. This was her mission. This was her passion. This was her primary and true calling. And so the family moved up to Highwood. Janet and Bernie wanted their sons to benefit from a diverse environment. That's why they chose Highwood. Their home was, like that home in Sioux City, a hub, a social hub for Ian and Ross's friends. Summers, it was Camp Keiser. Later, Sunday Fun Day. Janet and Bernie were not, strictly speaking, the strictest of parents. Unless strict parenting would include Bernie and the boys watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as pretty young kids on school nights, deep into the night. And Janet would shout, "They have to do their homework," or "They need to go to bed." But the Texas Chainsaw Massacre show must go on, and so it did. Janet taught her sons how to be, and she of course succeeded, and Bernie too, how to be mensches, good, decent human beings. She taught them, yes, she taught them the importance of gratitude, of kindness, of doing for others, which again, they clearly do. As Janet said to me, paraphrasing Jewish tradition, she said, "We live with God by serving others." And serve she did. She gave, and she gave, and she gave in manifold ways. She told me that even in the hospital, when she was in the hospital, she, the patient, the one with real needs, she was the one who was seeking to make the hospital staff feel good about themselves. She really was that very, very important, necessary for our common humanity and rare soul who just wanted to affirm, to validate other people, strangers, acquaintances, friends, loved ones. So many of us here, I know, felt that love that emanated from her. We felt all of her heart, all of her goodness. Her many friends and this close family, we all felt it, including Lyman, Yaakov and Josh, her great nieces and nephews, and many more, so many of us here. Janet always remained a devoted daughter and sister to Brenda and to Stephen. And when Stephen was sick, he lived for a time with Janet in Highwood. She learned so much from her younger brother. His passing was seismically painful for this family. In response to the inevitable question when such a young man is so sick, that question, why me? Why would a young man have to endure that? Stephen would respond, why not me? This wisdom remained with Janet. And I'll say, and again, we all know this kind of perspective and wisdom, it permeates, just a hallmark of this family. Janet was wise in how she raised Ian and Ross. She did not dictate or compel or direct. She guided, she facilitated. When Ian wanted to spend time helping children with disabilities, as Janet had, Janet was supportive. When Ross was going to baseball games in different places, and he and his mom spent much time together in that house, just when it was just the two of them when Ian moved out. But Janet was there, driving him to baseball games, sometimes getting lost, not infrequently. She was a busy mom. She was a busy person. She was always busy doing. She was not the kind of person that would just chill out and be mellow. She was president of the PTA. She would help with homework. She would do middle of the night trips to Kinko's, not like 10 or 11, but like 2 a.m. She hosted these big Seders and Hanukkah parties. And come what may, she learned when she had to learn. She learned new skills to keep her household ticking. Janet also enjoyed and appreciated her relationship with Shaw. And as the family expanded, she was overjoyed. When Ross and Samantha married, Samantha, like so many, found a second mother in Janet. Janet also appreciated the caring sensitivity of Mary Kay and was so happy to see Ian so happy. And then she became a grandma, a bubby. And Sloan and Dylan brought a new kind of joy to Janet and to Bernie. It was a pleasure for Janet to shop for her granddaughter. But she didn't only shop, of course. As she did for everyone, she guided, she loved, she taught. She taught every generation of her family about the importance of faith in God, love for Jewish tradition, the need for gratitude, the importance of generosity. And she told me that Torah really captured her credo, her life credo. Love your neighbor as yourself. Janet wanted to teach you, her family, always. She wanted to teach you even now. She said to me, even when I'm not here, I want them to know how they should live their lives. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Janet Keiser she created love. She brought ample measures of it to this world. And you returned that love to her. In her final days, her loved ones were there with her, holding her, kissing her, sharing with her all the love that she shared with you. And she communicated to you those final days. Be strong, don't cry, I love you. Alas, you will go forth with tears, for sure, with sadness, and also always sharing the love that she gave to you with each other. This is her most important lesson and her greatest legacy. Zichronah livracha. May Janet Keiser's memory ever be for blessing. Amen. It's my honor to call forth members of the family to speak about Janet Keiser, her sister Brenda.
Hello, I am Brenda Burgess. I'm Janet's older sister. I live in West Bloomfield, Michigan with my family. Anyone who knew my sister well knew that she liked to be in control of what went into her body, whether it was food or medications. She was adamant about not taking medications unless it was absolutely necessary, and used to drive me crazy about me taking my prescription medications I was on. It was the same with what she ate. She tried the last few years to eat very, very healthy, and I used to tell her it wouldn't be any fun to go out to eat with her anymore because she only wanted to eat what she cooked and could control what ingredients was used in preparation. She exhibited this control until she took her final breath. She fought like no one I have ever seen in my life to stay alive. She was going to control how and when she left this life to go to heaven and Hashem, God, and be with our loving relatives that had passed on and were waiting for her to join them in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, and heaven. My sister always liked to be the giver, and her friends know this. She never liked to receive. She always liked to be the giver. She was the most generous person I've ever known. She loved her boys, Ian and Ross, so much, and my mom, me, and Bernie, Shaw, and her beloved grandkids, the apple of her eye, Samantha and Dylan. She loved her nephews, their children, all her family, and all her dear, dear friends. Her family and those important to her were her main priorities. I feel lucky and privileged to have been with her these last few weeks and have been with her and was with her when she passed into God's arms. I know I will see her again in heaven when I pass on, and we all be together again with our family in heaven. She made her mark on everyone she touched with her friendship, and everyone will remember her with such a warm, loving feeling.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Nephew Josh.
Thank you all for coming today. It's funny, obviously, that we know Janet would not want any of this attention. She would not want people talking about her, and no doubt she would have left the room to go make copious amounts of food for everyone. The word that comes to mind when I think of my aunt is perspective. There's a lot of words that we naturally gravitate towards when we think of her. Loving, selfless, caring, devotion, kind, compassionate, intelligent, funny, worried mom, worried bubby, worried sister, worried daughter, natural listener. But to me, perspective always comes back. I would wager here that everyone has at least one, if not a plethora, of Janet stories that all end in the same way. Somehow, some way, Janet would make you feel better. Janet would make you feel heard. Janet would let you know that you were okay and you weren't crazy. Janet would make you feel loved. Among Janet's many natural gifts was her ability to really hear people and offer compassionate perspective on how things you frankly weren't thinking about and how to do it in a positive and non-judgmental way. She would nod and give a wry smile and make you feel better, then unleash a simple pearl of wisdom. I could see how that would hurt, but did you think about what that person was feeling when they did that? I saw that wisdom many times over. I made a terrible error in judgment myself in my mid-20s, hit a parked car late in the night in Indiana. And who was my first and only call? Aunt Janet, my second mom. She picked me up with no questions asked and immediately asked if I was okay. And my personal favorite, Josh, if you want, we can keep this a secret. I said, in our family? She didn't admonish me, belittle me, yell at me. or give me any disapproving looks. Quite the opposite. She hugged me repeatedly and talked about what could have been. Again, that perspective when it was needed the most. I was fortunate to have many late night talks with my aunt. I know, though, that I wasn't the only one, thankfully, as I couldn't count the number of times I would see her on the phone counseling friends and family late into the wee hours of the night. With each discussion, there would be a focus on better understanding the situations to make sure everyone's needs were met. And each discussion would end in the same way, with Janet expressing her endless pride about her amazing boys and wonderful grandkids. She would tell me, "Ian is so creative. His empathy astounds me. And I marvel at the love he shares for others. Ross is such a caring family man. I'm amazed at how smart and mature he is and how he balances everything and is always there for the entire family. Her love is enduring and shines through with her kids and beloved grandkids. The love we all feel for her is the ultimate tribute, and the kind deeds we do for each other are a daily reminder to be more like Janet, more like the caring, loving, kind, and compassionate people we should be each day that she continuously modeled." Lastly, one of my daughters asked at Thanksgiving one year how many people were coming when she saw the sheer amount of food. I told her it was just for family and close friends, which meant with Aunt Janet, that was for everyone.
Thank you, Josh. It's my honor to call forward our son, Ian.
Gratitude, generosity, empathy, selflessness, kindness, patience. These are qualities my mom naturally embodied. She taught by example, but also by the lessons embedded in every story and anecdote she told. Sometimes I thought I was the only person she cared about in the world, and she put everything into helping me grow and caring for me. And although no one can deny she over-indexed with regards to the energy she put into motherhood, it's clear most people in her life received the same treatment. The stories I've heard from people who experienced this from her have been overwhelming, but I was amazed to hear from people who met her once and could recall with detail the immediate connection she formed with them and the focused attention she gave them that wasn't unlike what I was fortunate enough to receive on a daily basis. My mom made me laugh like nobody else. She had it in her to be so silly, but also had unparalleled wisdom when it came to advice. My rebellious nature made me dismiss so much, but at some point I realized she was right about nearly everything she told me. So much beauty has gone from the world with her passing. I only hope that I and many of the people that saw what she was capable of can emulate her example and put as much beauty back in the world as we've lost with her.
Thank you. So beautiful, Ian. And now Ross.
Mom, the outpouring of love our family has received over the last few days speaks to how loved you were. A friend said you were the mommest mom to ever mom. I thought that was fitting. Others said you were a second mother to them. One of your friends would always say you had two hearts. Your love was appreciated by so many. Your degree was in education, but that didn't stop you from being a pseudo-psychiatrist. I know many in this room were counseled by you, pro bono, of course. When you talked with someone, anything under an hour was considered small talk. Your second pseudo degree was in nutrition. Additives, mold inhibitors, and high fructose corn syrup were the bane of your existence. That didn't stop you from being the greatest short order cook of all time. If someone made the mistake of telling you what they liked to eat, it would magically appear in the fridge in abundance at their next visit. All hours of the night, you were there to feed everyone's body and soul. In your later years, you earned an honorary master's degree in financial planning. Those around you were in for it if they didn't know what their annual budget was or when their money would run out in retirement. Your final pseudo-career was in pharmacy, as Brenda alluded to. You would spend hours looking up side effects and drug interactions for family and friends. With all these pseudo-careers, you still had time to pour your heart and soul into being my mom. You made it to every sporting event when I was younger. You didn't much care how I did or what the score was, and your entertainment came from socializing in the stands. When I was in high school, there was a long period of time where it was just the two of us in the house. We were able to build the peaceful home environment we both craved. Later in life, when I had my own family, I modeled my home off of those incredible years. You expressed your love through food. In high school, you would pick me up from school with food before taking me to practice because you were worried I wouldn't have enough energy to make it to dinner. You would send care packages when I was at college to ensure I was eating. When I would drive home from Indiana, there would be an entire table of my favorite foods waiting for me. When you were really sick at the end, you were still worried about if Grandma and everyone else had had enough to eat. There was no secret that you were my person until I met my wife. You were so willing to pass the baton that you had twirled for years to Samantha when you knew she would take as good of care of me as you had. You were so happy when your granddaughter Sloan was born. You finally had a girl to play dolls with and buy clothes for. Sloan wanted me to say how she always loved playing with you. You were always so nice to her. Dylan came a few years later, and he was really good at making you laugh. You always got a kick out of him. Over the last month, I spent more time at your house than I had in many years. I was reminded of the Godfather scene where Michael Corleone returns to his childhood home and says, "There are many things my father taught me here in this room. In my case, it was you, my mother, teaching. You were the consummate teacher. Everything was an opportunity to teach a lesson about gratitude or respect. You taught us how powerful your love was, even during the last few days of your life." In one of my favorite scenes of The Godfather, Vito says to his son, "There just wasn't enough time, Michael." In these last few days, I kept thinking there just wasn't enough time for us, and how it seemed so unfair that you were gone. I could hear now what you would say to me. Be grateful for the time we had. Be grateful. I promise to pass your lessons of gratitude on to my children, and they will eventually pass it on to their children. Your legacy will live on, l'ador vador, from generation to generation.
Thank you, Ross. It's an honor to call forward nephew Rabbi Yaakov Burgess.
I've heard a number of times today already, and certainly in the last week, the phrase "like a mother." This is no surprise to any of you who knew my Aunt Janet. There are aunts and there are aunts. It depends on the family. It depends on a lot of circumstances, whether you're a mother, a father. You can't help but be involved with very closely. But an aunt, that can go either way. My aunt, I was talking to somebody about my impressions just the other day, and what's sort of most salient, what's the most important thing that I could say about her. And this also is no surprise to anyone who knew her. She participated in the lives of the people that she knew. She didn't just want to hear your story or your news. She she involved herself in the lives of those who were close to her. There are too many people to mention and to thank for their involvement with her, not only over the years, but especially in the last year and a half of her illness. But I just do want to mention the phenomenal love and care that I witnessed in the person of her sons, Ian and Ross. I couldn't believe what I saw. I haven't heard it yet, but I know my mother's thinking, were you watching? Were you watching this? Watching? Yes, Mom, I was watching. It's big shoes to fill. I don't know. Lo Elena, we shouldn't be there, but I just couldn't believe what I saw. So she was an aunt. She was in my house. She was known as Tante Yosifa. Tante is Yiddish for aunt. The Hebrew is Doda. Many of you are familiar with L'cha Dodi. Doda is from the root of dear one. And that is exactly what she was to me. She was my Doda. Part of that dearness I was able to experience with her, maybe it was 10 days, 2 weeks or so before her passing, when we said the vidui, we said confession over the phone together, where she recited words from the siddur, from the prayer book, that professed her faith, which was an authentic faith for her. It wasn't just something to read out of a book. That was a very special moment. It was a privilege for me to do that with her. And likewise, another moment of dearness that I was able to share with her. It's really not a moment. It's over and over again, and it's a word also that you've heard repeated is her gratitude. She shared with me the perspective, the feeling, the outlook that you just always want to look at the good in your life and think about where it comes from and enjoy it and be expressive of that gratitude. That was such a remarkable quality that my aunt had. The sages, our great rabbis, say that it is better to visit the house of mourning than to participate in a festive meal. These are very strange words. I know that this is not my favorite moment in life. This is not the favorite place for any of us to be. Why is it better then to be in such a moment and to be in such a place than some of the places that we would prefer? I think it's because the pain that a lot of us are feeling today is really the way that we're feeling our love for her. Today it takes the form of pain. And it's very deep because the love is very deep. This is a crisis, let's be honest. That's what we could call it for our family and those who are very close to her. The word in Hebrew for crisis is mashber. Mashber is from the root of shvira, of brokenness, of rupture. So that's obviously a very apt way to talk about something that we would term a crisis. I once heard I didn't hear it directly, but I heard that a very great rabbi was asked about moments in life that are so overwhelmingly painful for us, and why do they occur, right? This is the question that all of us has wondered at some time or another, and we can ask it of this day and this situation as well. And his answer was very simple. He says, we don't understand God, we don't understand his ways and his plan. But what we do know that the word mashber, which means crisis, also means birth stool. It's a connotation of new life, of new opportunity. And he says this is not an accident. The word mashber connects us with a frightful experience, a painful experience, but it also reminds us that in every difficult experience there is tremendous opportunity. And I want to return to that in a moment. The idea of opportunity and what this moment means for my family and for those who are close to my Aunt Janet. But I'd also like to turn to the issue of nachama, of consolation. Today, after the burial, we enter a new phase. We enter the phase of Shiva, of trying to strengthen one another. And I just wanted to say a couple of words of nachama, of consolation to my family, and again, those who are close to my aunt and who are feeling this this moment, this loss so deeply. I mentioned the sages, I mentioned our great rabbis. So there's something more I'd like to say in their name, but first I want to say, so who are these people? So we have wise people in our tradition. They have said clever things. All peoples, certainly all religions, have their wise people who share with them important ideas and ideas to live by. But who am I talking about when I refer to this to the Jewish sages, to the great rabbis who have guided us through the generations and who guide us in moments like this, how we approach death, how we approach loss. Anyone who's paying attention to the news and thinks about Israel knows that there's a great danger now in terms of what they're facing from enemies, and in particular from Iran. I don't want to get political, but there's a medrash, there's rabbinic writing that talks about what will be, at least potentially in the end of days, what scenario we might see when history comes to its climax, to its apex. So there's a Yalkut Shimoni, which is a collection of medrash, and it talks about Paras, it talks about Persia. Persia, as some of you know, is present-day Iran, and it says that Persia will attempt to be machriv the olam, will attempt to destroy the world, and that there will be a great calamity in the world. And the rabbis tell us that the Jewish people will cry out because they will be in the center of this calamity, and God will assure them that all that has gone on until that moment, and including that moment of great fright and pain, is being done for their good. I won't say much more about this, but I want to point out that this medrash wasn't written 5 years or 10 years ago when you would have easily been able to predict such a thing. This is a medrash that was written at least 1,000 years ago. So when I say the sages, when I say our great rabbis, these are the people that I'm referring to. There's a special Kaddish that is recited after burial. And some of the words of that Kaddish are as follows. We will say, may his great name grow exalted and sanctified in the world which will be renewed, and where he will resuscitate the dead and raise them up to eternal life and rebuild the city of Jerusalem and complete his temple within it. My wife and our 13-year-old son, God willing, are going to be traveling to Israel tomorrow. It's our bar mitzvah present to him, to my Meir Simcha. One of the places, of course, they're going to visit is the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall. This is a wall that our sages, that our great rabbis promised would never be destroyed. And in fact, the city of Jerusalem, which has stood for millennia, has been invaded, has been destroyed and rebuilt 9 times. And yet that wall still stands untouched to this day. And it is because the sages tell us that the Shekhinah, that the presence of God in this world rests in particular in that place, in that holy place. The same God that has ensured the existence of the Jewish people and that has made sure that that wall stands as an eternal sign to us of his love and his caring, even in the darkest moments and the most difficult times, is the same God that promises to resuscitate the dead and bring us all together in the future. And that's something important to remember. I think that's something that my Aunt Janet liked to think about and talk about and would like for us to remember as well. Hashem nasan v'Hashem lakach. God is given and God is taken away. But the same God is referred to as Avinu Malkeinu, the words in the beautiful rendition that Cantor Gale sang for us earlier. And Avinu means father. And I think that my aunt, as much as anyone that I know in my personal life, related to God, tried to relate to God as not only something ethereal and abstract, but as a loving parent, as a force in her life that guided her and cared for her. And everyone who knew her saw that and felt that. So in the meanwhile, while we're waiting for the words, some of the words that I said from the siddur to come to fruition as we work together as a Jewish people and as society in general, to forward ourselves, to improve ourselves, I hope that I will be able, in her honor, to do a couple of things, and I would invite all of you to join me in this, to take this pain that we're feeling now and know that it's pain because it's revealing love, deep love that we felt for her. And she was just, who can be emulated like her in the giving of love and the sharing of love? That is something that I hope that I'll do a little bit better from this day going forward in her honor as a zechus for her. I also hope that I can be more grateful, that I can take moments out, like her sons mentioned, like others have mentioned, to think about just the small good thing in my life and where it came from, because that's what my Aunt Janet did all the time, and we learned that from her. It's traditional that as we bid farewell to someone with whom we were so close that we ask Mechila. I want to say to Yusufa Piro Bas Eliezer Vilea that if there is any way that I slighted you or I harmed you in any way, I hope that you will forgive me. I want to say to my family that we're going to do what she wants us to do. We're going to hold together. We're going to love each other more. We're going to continue to work together on gratitude and in other qualities that she emulated for us so that we can go together, God willing, soon to the day, in the words that we'll say when leaving the cemetery today, when God will swallow up death forever and when he will wipe away the tears from every face.
Amen, and thank you so much, Rabbi Burgess. Leida hi reshit, uftirat tachlit hachayim kamasahem, tahalicha kitzmicha mishalav l'shalav. Birth is a beginning, death a destination, and life a journey, a going and a growing from stage to stage. Now the life journey of Janet Keiser has now come to its sad conclusion. And so, God, into your care, we entrust the spirit of Janet Keiser. For you keep faith with your children in death as in life. God, sustain us that we may meet with serenity the mysteries that lie ahead for us, knowing that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you, O God, will be with us as a loving friend in whom we put our trusts. You are the light of our lives and our hope in eternity. Please rise for the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer.
Hail, Malei Rachamim, Shochein b'meromim, Hametzei menucha nechuvana tachat kanefei hashechina. B'ma'alot kedoshim, b'ma'alot kedoshim, kedoshim רשימות הורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת יוסיף הפל בת אליעזר וליה שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהי מנוחתה. Hana ba'al harachamim hastireh b'set knafecha li'olamim utzror bitzror achayim utzror ביצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו ותנוח ושלום.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence with the holy and the pure who shine like the glow of the heavens, to Janet Keiser, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence and within the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And we say, Amen. You may be seated.
The interment will take place at Waldheim Jewish Cemetery in Forest Park. Our procession is lining up in the parking lot, and you'll obtain an orange funeral sticker for the inside portion of your front windshield, as well as a magnetic flag for most of the vehicles in the procession. And please use your bright headlights at all times in procession, as well as your emergency flasher lights, and stay as close as safety will allow to the car in front of you to avoid large gaps. The Shiva will be observed at the Keiser residence in Highwood at 153 Michigan Avenue today, approximately 4 p.m. when the family returns from the cemetery, until 10 p.m. this evening, and then again tomorrow, Tuesday, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And the family has requested memorial contributions to the Cancer Research Institute in New York, and all this information is listed in the service folder you received today. If you did not receive one, you can receive one on the way out. And for those of you viewing online, this information is listed on the Chicago Jewish Funerals website as well. At this time, I'll ask the following pallbearers to please step forward. Lyman Burgess, Rabbi Yaakov Burgess, Joshua Burgess, Amir Ibrahim, Brad Bursch, Jeff Bursch, and Dmitry Kovalabov. Please rise as the casket is escorted from the chapel.
Tatsir, Melachit,